She accidentally texted a lonely millionaire. What happened next will leave you inspiringly amazed. Sarah's fingers trembled as she hit send, her heart sinking in an instant. She'd meant to confide in her best friend, but instead, a raw message about her exhausting day landed in the hands of Eric, the secluded millionaire outside Willow Creek. "I just can't take another night shift. I feel like I can't breathe sometimes," it read. The vulnerability that spilled from her was so frightening, yet somehow it felt liberating. She couldn't fathom how her thoughts had surfaced in such a drastic way. Eric, with his sprawling mansion and lavish lifestyle, was worlds away from her daily struggles as a nurse, where laughter echoed through sterile halls and hopes flickered behind worn-out eyes. Yet there was something about him, an unseen connection tracing through the veil of money that separated their lives. Her breath quickened as she considered their difference, a stark contrast between her humble labor and his untold wealth. Hadn't she been taught all her life that gratitude and giving to others defined true success? Now, a swell of guilt washed over her. What right did she have to fantasize about something beyond her reach? The weight of her duty consumed her, but so did the need for something more, an escape from the burnout that stalked her every move. As hours dripped by, Eric's response felt like lifeblood in her weary veins. He'd penned an understanding reply, sharing his loneliness that resided within lavish walls and shimmering accolades. It was an odd comfort, yet she felt out of place. Her life was wrapped in duty and hardship, while his seemed dulled by isolation, despite the resources he possessed. An invisible wall loomed over their exchanges, filled with the unspoken tension. Could she truly engage with someone so far from her realm? But then there was that thrill, the temptation to explore where this connection could lead. Just as Sarah embraced the warmth their messages brought, her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "Stay humble, Sarah. Remember your roots." The clash of her mother's teachings and her aspirations sparked an inner turmoil that struck her like an icy wave. Would her family understand? The tighter she gripped this blossoming connection with Eric, the more she felt her upbringing slip away, like sand through her fingers. What if she were judged? The fear of disappointing her family gnawed at her, wrapping around her heart like an iron vice. As she spiraled deeper into her sea of doubt, the idea of visiting him stirred conflicting emotions. The mansion, though a picture of grandeur, represented everything she'd been taught to shy away from. Would she become lost in its depths, drowning in expectations that did not fit her? What would they whisper in town when they discovered she was pursuing a life so far removed from their humble world? Anxiety churned in her gut, restlessly simmering beneath the surface where dreams clashed against yearnings for approval. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Tension continued to mount as she wrestled with her growing closeness to Eric. His invitation lay blatant before her, fraught with possibility, yet shadowed by her fear of what they could unravel. Then came the news about Eric's betrayal. It ignited a wild surge in her, a clearer understanding of his pain paired with a fierce determination to help. But as her feelings intensified, so did her desire to maintain her values and navigate the chaos circling them. What was loyalty against the backdrop of truth? As she clutched her phone, the weight of her revelation stilled her hands, and she could taste the uncertainty lingering in the air like fog. There, alone with her racing thoughts, she composed a message about her discovery, the air thickening around her. Would she take the leap into this new world, or retract, protecting both him and herself from a tangled fate? The moment stretched into an eternity as she hovered over the screen. Uncertainty crackled in the atmosphere. What she chose could tether them together or split them apart. What did it mean to spark change for someone else's sake? It was more than just a text. This could alter everything. Every tick of the clock echoed in Sarah's mind as she stared at her phone. This single decision felt monumental, the gravity of it weighing her down. She delved deeper into her own thoughts, the mingling of hope and dread swelling like a tide ready to crash. There was a growing realization that her response to Eric could define more than just their connection. It could reshape her understanding of herself. The prospect of visiting Eric had become a double-edged sword in her psyche. At one angle, it promised a reprieve from the suffocating routine of her life, a flicker of excitement that blurred the lines between friendship and something deeper. But on the other hand, it stirred up the lessons imprinted on her by her upbringing, warning her against the seduction of wealth and the moral compromises that could accompany it. She felt the walls of her small-town life closing in, boundaries she had always accepted beginning to shift. A surge of adrenaline sparked as she typed, her heart racing with each keystroke. She positioned her words carefully, nurturing them into a message that would convey both her understanding and her burgeoning desire to connect more deeply with Eric. This wasn't just about compassion or sympathy. It trembled with her enthusiasm for tackling life's complexities alongside someone who understood the weight of emotional burdens. But just as quickly, doubt flooded her again. Was it right to seek joy while they both stood on the precipice of their respective pains? Was she crossing a line? This inner war sharpened her focus, revealing a hidden fierceness she hadn't realized was there. The very act of contemplating a visit became an affirmation of her own needs, her own hunger for a world that was broader and more nuanced than she had often experienced. Taking a deep breath, her finger hovered over the send button. At that moment, she reflected on her career, a nurse in the chaotic whirlwind of lives and souls. Each day was filled with high stakes, but in those moments of life and death uncertainty, she found immense satisfaction. Helping others in their vulnerable states nurtured her own sense of purpose. Was this not the same? Was she not reaching out, teetering on the risk of vulnerability for the sake of connection? In a moment of clarity, Sarah pressed send. The message flew into the digital ether, with her hope trailing behind. But the relief was short-lived, as anticipation bubbled alongside her anxiety. What would Eric's response mean for her? Would it cultivate hope, or unravel complexities that she wasn't ready to face? In the midst of her turmoil, the weight of choice thrust her future into the unknown, igniting a spark of determination she had long buried. If she could risk opening up to Eric, could she also challenge her own perspective on success and happiness? The path ahead was uncharted, yet it shimmered with the thrill of potential. Suddenly, her phone buzzed with a reply, and she felt her heart leap. What awaited her on the other side of that screen? As she read Eric's words, a mix of fear and exhilaration washed over her, with the sense that this moment could change everything. Just as she reached for clarity, the smile of possibility flickered in her mind, and she knew she could no longer retreat. Determined, she stood at the threshold of a journey that promised to redefine not only her life, but her understanding of what it meant to truly connect. The moment had arrived to face not only Eric, but also the fears that had tethered her spirit for so long. What lay ahead? Was it a world full of risk, or an opportunity to rewrite the story of her life? Reading Eric's message sent an electric jolt through Sarah, igniting her thoughts into a frenzy. "I would love for you to visit. Let's talk, and maybe laugh a bit." He followed up his invitation with a playful emoji that found its way into her mind like a puzzle piece finally clicking into place. This wasn't just an invitation, it was an opening, a fragile thread binding her world to his. Yet as Sarah lingered on his words, she felt the familiar shadow of self-doubt creep back in. There was a palpable fear that echoed her upbringing, the prescriptive notions about wealth, ambition, and moral integrity. Was she swaying into unfamiliar territory, seeking solace in the arms of a millionaire? It painted a stark contrast to her resolute commitment to a life defined by helping others, one shaped by the struggle to forge fulfillment without the crutch of affluence. Am I worth his time? She mused, scrutinizing her own insecurities like a slow-motion train wreck. Would he see her as just a nurse? Just a small-town girl reaching out to a much larger, more complex world? Or could she show him something he hadn't realized he was missing? Sincerity? A grounding presence amidst the opulence? Realization burst through her. This wasn't solely about Eric. It was a chance for her to redefine what greatness looks like. Wasn't she a pillar of humility in her profession? A dependable force amid chaos? Suddenly, the idea of visiting him didn't feel like surrendering her identity. It felt like an opportunity to merge her worlds, bringing her compassionate, grounded self into a space that had the potential to be as vibrant and colorful as she dared to imagine. Taking a deep breath, Sarah pulled herself up straight, determination hardening her face. Life had never offered silver platters. It was always a matter of navigating challenges and snatching opportunities. If she could assist the vulnerable, why not extend that nurturing spirit to herself? The posting shift loomed ahead of her, but anxious energy transformed into an urge to prepare. She set aside her scrubs, brushing her fingers over the fabric like a talisman, before reaching for her suitcase. Visions of Eric's world flashed through her mind: polished floors, grand views, and laden tables. Yet, even more importantly, they illuminated a canvas for connection. As Sarah folded her clothes with precision, she felt the weight of her choices settle within her, not as burdens, but as badges of courage. She understood the stakes and the risks involved, but wasn't that the very crux of living meaningfully? Every meticulously chosen outfit reflected how she intended to embody her truest self while breaking through boundaries. Hours later, she boarded the train to the city. The rhythmic clatter of wheels on tracks matched the tempo of her racing heart. Empty spaces beside her filled her mind with possibilities, and she mentally outlined the conversation that awaited her. Would they talk of life's complexities, or would they simply share laughter and anecdotes? Emerging from the sleek station into the city's chaos, she was engulfed by a rush of possibilities. A rat race, buzzing with ambition, whispers of dreams, and vibrant stories waiting to be told. Here, in this broader universe, she hurtled toward her fate, her insights sharpening with each step. But just as she found herself immersed in the moment, her phone buzzed again. Holding her breath, she hesitated, knowing full well that this message would determine whether her anticipated journey of discovery was about to evolve or transform into something entirely different. The time had come to confront more than just the what-ifs surrounding Eric. It was time to face new parts of herself, to delve deeper into what she truly sought in this uncharted territory. What new revelations would emerge in this rich landscape of self-exploration and potential? The buzz from her phone broke Sarah's reverie, dragging her momentarily away from the vibrant chaos of the city around her. She glanced at the screen, and the message from Eric flickered back at her with an invitation perched on the edge of her curiosity, a question that could spiral her journey in unexpected directions. "Are you here yet?" The simplicity of his words felt charged with an unspoken understanding. It was an anchor amidst the storm of her thoughts. She quickly typed a response, her fingers hovering over each key as the weight of her thoughts cascaded through her mind. Did she want to reveal the turmoil that swelled within her, the hesitation? Or would it be more potent to cloak her internal struggle in a veil of confidence? The decision flashed like a light in her mind. She could choose strength. She began typing. Just arrived, excited to finally meet before hitting send. Immediately, a flood of thoughts rose to the surface. She was not merely taking a step into Eric's world. She was challenging her own perceptions about success, connection, and belonging. The pulse of the city quickened around her as she made her way to the cafe where they agreed to meet. Her heart raced, not from anxiety, but from anticipation. Each footstep resonated with the realization that she had made a choice that defied the narratives of her past, where wealth and success were synonymous with self-worth. This moment held the potential to reshape her understanding of both Eric and herself. As she entered the cafe, the warmth of the ambiance enveloped her. The soft murmur of voices mixed with the rich aroma of brewed coffee, creating an inviting setting that offered respite from the outside noise. Sarah scanned the room, her gaze locking on Eric, who sat comfortably at a corner table, a welcoming smile blossoming upon seeing her. He rose to greet her, exuding an energy that was disarming and invigorating. "Sarah, I'm glad you could make it," he said, gesturing for her to sit. The sincerity in his voice diffused some of her tension. "Thanks for inviting me," she replied, her usual composure slipping back into place. As they delved into light banter, Sarah couldn't help but marvel at the stark contrast between her world and his. She shared anecdotes from her days at the hospital, stories colored with both humor and poignant moments of vulnerability. To her surprise, Eric listened intently, his eyes gleaming with genuine interest. But beneath the surface of their conversation, Sarah sensed an uncharted territory, the unexamined layers of her own ambitions and fears. What did she want from this encounter? Was it mere companionship, or did it extend deeper? She felt the undercurrents of her past, woven with insecurities, test her resolve. Just as she began to voice her insights, Eric leaned in, his expression shifting from playful to serious. "You know, you have an incredible way of telling your stories. It's refreshing to hear someone speak with such honesty." The compliment hung in the air, both energizing and daunting. Could she truly embrace this acknowledgement? What did it mean for her identity? Driven by an impulse, Sarah challenged herself. "And you have to know that there's more to life than just success and wealth." The words slipped from her lips, charged with a stubborn courage. It was a push against the fear that had loomed like a specter in her life. Eric met her gaze, intrigue shadowing his features. "What do you mean by that?" Here was the moment Sarah had envisioned, a potential turning point where she could explore the depths of her convictions and confront the influence of external perceptions. It was no longer just about Eric, it was an examination of her very core. And just as she prepared to unravel her thoughts, a tremor of uncertainty flickered within her. What if she said too much? What if he couldn't understand? In that instant, she realized that this encounter was more than just a meeting with a millionaire. It was a crucible for her evolution, a space where the girl who used to stand on the peripheries now had the chance to reclaim her voice. But just as she took a deep inhale, ready to articulate her newfound resolve, her phone buzzed again, a stark reminder that not all conversations could be contained within the cozy cafe. This one had the potential to reverberate far beyond the moment, challenging everything she thought she knew. What awaited her on the other side of that notification? The notification glowed on Sarah's screen, a jarring reminder of the outside world that stood in stark contrast to the warmth of the cafe. She stole a glance at Eric before unlocking her phone, curiosity mingling with an insistent pulse of anxiety. Was it a distraction, or perhaps a signal? The moment felt critical, pulsating with energy that made her both exhilarated and hesitant. The message was from her supervisor, a terse request asking for an immediate report on a case that had been under her care. Sarah's heart sank. Here she was, unraveling threads of newfound confidence, and yet the weight of her professional responsibilities bore down on her, reminding her of the steady demands of her job. "Everything all right?" Eric's voice cut through her thoughts, concern etched across his brow. She forced a smile, unsure how to respond. "Just a work thing," she managed, feeling the tug of war between her professional obligations and her desire to engage with him fully. "You seem a bit distracted," Eric observed, his gaze penetrating, yet, "If you need to take care of it, I completely understand." The ease with which he offered her an out was disarming. It reminded her that success didn't hinge solely on rigid professionalism, but could also accommodate authenticity. Yet there was urgency in her internal dialogue. How many opportunities like this might she let slip away? Sarah inhaled deeply, fighting the instinct to withdraw. You know, this is a chance for me to explore what I'm really passionate about, she replied, feeling her resolve solidify. I've been so focused on work that I've set aside my personal interests. I want to change that. That's amazing, Eric said, leaning forward. What interests you? The end of the question hung there, charged with possibility. Sarah's heart danced at the thought of articulating desires that had long been buried beneath a mountain of responsibility. She thought about the story she wished to tell, the change she hoped to inspire, not just in her profession as a nurse, but in her very being. Writing, for starters. I've always wanted to explore that, to dive deeper into creative pursuits, she confessed. Even as she spoke, doubt clawed at her. Would a creative venture fit into her life? Were these aspirations childish whims? Writing, that's fantastic. Eric's voice was warm, laced with encouragement. You have such a knack for storytelling. You should pursue it. The unexpected affirmation sparked something inside Sarah. This was a pivotal juncture, a moment when she could dilute the boundaries that had defined her, to be more than just a professional, to embrace all facets of her identity. Yet, amidst his praise, a hesitant voice whispered doubts about practicality and failure. A moment of silence stretched between them. Even though they were surrounded by the cafe's comforting chatter, it left her feeling strangely exposed. What if this was merely an escape from the reality that weighed heavily on her? The pull of responsibility faded beneath the glow of potential self-discovery. Have you ever felt overshadowed by your own expectations? She mused, veering their conversation toward a deeper realm. Like wanting to be something more, but the pressure keeps dragging you back? Eric's expression changed. The openness in his eyes was profound. Absolutely. It can be suffocating, but that struggle can be a good thing. It pushes you to carve out who you really are. She could sense the sincerity in his words. Each revelation chipped away at the walls she had built, revealing the vulnerability they both shared. Here, in this moment, she felt a flicker of courage to embrace the unknown. Sarah's phone vibrated again, another reminder of her responsibilities waiting outside this cafe haven. It pierced the air, demanding her attention. Could she step away from the chains of expectation? As Eric regarded her with anticipation, the weight of the crossroads she faced pressed down. To embrace her dream meant risking the comfort of her current life. To step into the unknown could lead them both toward something rich or, perhaps, fracture. The hard-earned serenity of their moment. With resolve stirring within, she took a deep breath, bracing for the leap she could choose to either reject or embrace. Yet before she could voice her decisions, Eric's phone buzzed, prompting an uneasy twist in the unfolding narrative. What revelation lay within that message, poised to challenge everything Sarah hoped to explore? The atmosphere shifted when Eric glanced at his phone, his smile faltering as he read the message. Sarah's heart raced at the sight of his expression. It was a mere text, but felt like a portent of impending change. What secrets lay behind those digital words? "Sorry, I need to take this," he said, his tone a fusion of urgency and tension. The retreat of his focus back to the screen left a palpable void between them, echoing the gravity of her own unresolved musings. She watched him, knowing it wasn't her place to intrude. Yet the pause in their dialogue roared louder than the cafe's ambiance. As she attempted to refocus, her thoughts spiraled back to her own ambitions. What if she let her dreams wither under the weight of unending responsibilities? The time slipped away as Eric's fingers danced over the screen, and Sarah grappled with her restlessness. She contemplated her nursing case, which demanded meticulous reporting, Yet a twinge of guilt clutched at her for wanting to resist. This was her chance, an opportunity to break free, a moment that could shape her future. But at what cost? Eric completed his quick exchange and returned his gaze, though the shadow of concern lingered in his eyes. "Sorry about that, family emergency," he explained. Yet Sarah sensed there was more, an underlying frustration, as if he were wrestling with more than just a transient issue. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her empathy bridging the silent chasm that had formed. "Yeah, just dealing with some unexpected stuff." He shrugged, but his expression betrayed a deeper worry. "It's just, I could use a little support right now." His admission struck a chord within her. Here they were, both entangled in layers of expectation, whether from family, career, or society. For the first time, she saw their parallel struggles converge. Together, might they inspire each other to transcend their self-imposed limitations? "What if we both could take a leap? You mentioned support. What about encouraging each other in our pursuits?" she proposed, emboldened by the admission that had slipped from him. "Are you suggesting I help you with your writing dreams?" he asked, an eyebrow raised in intrigued challenge. "Yes, but only if you allow me to support you too," she replied, her resolve tightening into clarity. "I've been clinging to my safe path for too long. I want balance, whatever that looks like." Eric's eyes lit up, his previous concern flipping into a prospect that made the air between them thrum with possibility. "I'd love that, actually. It's rare to find someone who sees beyond the surface." A thrill tinged the air as they began to construct a shared vision, an unspoken agreement to uplift each other's spirits. Yet still, doubt curled in the corners of her mind. How would they forge this path amid life's unyielding demands? "We should set tangible goals," she suggested. "Weekly writing exercises for me, and for you, whatever you need to unearth what's weighing you down." "Sounds like a plan," he replied, the gravity of his earlier message fading slightly, replaced with excitement. Yet, just at the moment when their worlds seemed aligned, a sudden dread crept in. Could they genuinely bear each other's burdens, or was it just another hopeful sentiment tethered to an emotional encounter spun in a cafe? "Just know that balancing these commitments won't be easy, but I'm willing to try if you are," Sarah ventured, glancing away momentarily at the vibrant cafe scene. "Same here," Eric replied, with a soft smile that kindled warmth in her chest. "Let's turn our challenges into triumphs." As they sealed their pact with shared determination, the narrative of their lives began shifting course. But there remained an unsettling thought lurking in Sarah's mind. Was this really the right path? Would she uncover the passion she craved, or would every effort plunge her deeper into disillusionment? Just then, Eric's phone buzzed again, breaking the fragile bubble of their resolution. He hesitated, glancing down, his expression tightening once more. "Sometimes," he murmured, a mixture of concern and frustration threading his words, "new revelations can be overwhelming." The air felt charged, a reminder that every decision held the potential to reshape not just their trajectories individually, but the journey they could navigate together. And with that, uncertainty lingered, leaving Sarah on the precipice of exploration. What storm of discovery awaited them both on the horizon? A heavy silence hung between Sarah and Eric, punctuated only by the soft chatter of cafe patrons and the click of coffee cups being set down. As Eric absorbed the new message, Sarah sensed an uninvited tension threading through the air, lacing their earlier excitement with uncertainty. The contrast felt stark. It was as if their ambitious pledge was hanging by a thread, swaying in the wind of his undisclosed turmoil. "What's going on?" she asked, braving the gulf that had widened once more. The concern in her voice layered over the underlying tremor of doubt that gripped her heart. She needed clarity, but more than that, she needed a connection that might fortify their shared journey. "Just family issues," he replied, casting his gaze towards the window as if the outside world might provide some solace. "But it's complicated." His reluctance to provide details echoed too closely with her own apprehensions about sharing her struggles. Did they both carry burdens too heavy to share? Complicated is the word of the day for both of us, isn't it? Sarah said, her voice steadying in the face of her inner conflict. But we made a pact. Let's hold each other accountable, not only for our goals, but for what's bothering us underneath. I think that's the only way we'll truly find balance. He regarded her with a mix of admiration and surprise, as if her words illuminated a path he hadn't considered. Okay then, you first, Eric said, crossing his arms in a way that signaled both defensiveness and readiness, his eyes searching for a deeper understanding of her world. As her mind raced for the right words, Sarah felt a ripple of vulnerability wash over her. Would revealing her true feelings erode the solidarity they had built, or deepen it? Honestly, I've been feeling trapped in my nursing routine, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The autonomy feels stifled. I want more than just documenting cases. I want to write, to push beyond the boundaries of a hospital room. But it scares me. It feels like I'm aiming for a dream that could turn into another form of imprisonment. Writing was always the freedom I craved, Eric said, nodding as if she'd just articulated something he understood profoundly. You have to let it out, Sarah. The fears, the dreams, all of it. I've neglected my own passions too, and it's draining. I've been caught in a web of expectations, my family, career choices, and constantly asking if I'm doing it right. The honesty exchanged between them struck a chord that vibrated up through her core. They were both tangled in their respective nets of responsibility and expectation, yet here they were carving a space to voice their entrapments. Maybe that's where we can help each other truly grow, Sarah suggested, understanding that our fears aren't solitary demons, but shared burdens could be our strength. What if we made our first goal about being transparent? Eric's expression softened, and a resolute spark ignited in his eyes. You mean like sharing a journal or something? A space to pour out everything, not just the triumphs? Exactly, Sarah affirmed, feeling warmth spread within her. We can track our struggles and victories, like a dialogue that nurtures both our writing and personal growth. The idea cemented their connection further, threading joy through the earlier heaviness. Yet, in the back of her mind, a lingering anxiety stirred. Would being so open expose them to vulnerabilities they could neither expect nor handle? Sarah couldn't shake off the feeling that a greater task lay ahead, not just in relating to each other, but facing the emotional labyrinth within themselves. All right, Eric said, leaning in, determination etched across his face. Let's meet weekly, not just to write, but to confront what's buried. It'll be terrifying, but I think we can change the narrative of our lives together. As they committed to this exploration, Sarah felt a tremor of excitement mirror her trepidation. For the first time in years, she felt as if she had both clarity and chaos intertwining at once. But as they dissected the currents of their inner selves, a pulse of foreboding tinged the air. What hidden truths would they uncover, and could they withstand the revelations that lay waiting in the shadows? Just then, Eric's phone buzzed again, a stark reminder of the outside world. He hesitated before glancing down, the worry returning to his features. It might change everything, he murmured, uncertainty threading through his words once more. With that, the tide of impending revelations grew, leaving Sarah gripping the edge of her resolve. What would rise next from the depths of their intertwined stories? The cafe began to fade into the background as Sarah's heart raced. Eric's voice was becoming a distant hum, drowned out by the urgent pulse of her thoughts. The flickering light outside caught her attention. The sun was setting, and its golden hue spilled through the window, drawing her gaze, but failing to illuminate the shadows gathering in her mind. What do you mean?" Sarah finally managed to ask, though dread twisted in her stomach. The weight of Eric's unspoken worry loomed larger as a clock ticked steadily, marking time and looming decisions. Eric's brow furrowed as he processed his thoughts. It's about my family. My father. He's not getting any better. I think my mother wants me to come back home. They need me. His eyes were dark, suffused with a mixture of responsibility and frustration. But going back feels like abandoning everything I've started here. The writing, this connection. A plunge of empathy rippled through Sarah. She recognized the precipice at which Eric stood. It mirrored her own precarious balance between duty and desire. Yet amid the chaos, she felt her own resolve hardening. This was the moment she needed to solidify her own voice. Eric, you have to think about what you truly want, she said, her tone firm but gentle. I know the weight of family obligations, but you also have to explore your own dreams. It can't be both ways forever. Instead of his eyes softening, a hardness settled into his features, an instinctive defense mechanism. You say that like it's simple, but if I leave, what does that say about my commitment, about everything I've built here? And there it was, the intersection of fear and ambition, a relatable struggle. Yet Sarah couldn't allow herself to be swept into the undercurrent of his self-doubt. You took a leap to pursue your writing. It didn't come easily, and neither will this decision. But stifling the urge to confront what you want is just a different kind of cage. She sensed his internal conflict intensify, a brewing storm in his eyes. In that moment, Sarah recognized the shift within herself. Her voice carried a conviction bolstered by her desire for her own freedom. It wasn't easy, but speaking up for both of them had surfaced her latent courage. Eric leaned back as if struck. You're right. I'm scared. That fear of the what-ifs? His voice faltered, revealing an unintended vulnerability, a crack through which promise could pour. Taking a deep breath, Sarah continued, embracing the newfound step in their partnership. Maybe we anchor ourselves, but in facing these fears. What if, every week, we share our struggles on paper? Our fears, our dreams, our choices, past, present, future. It could be cathartic. His gaze shifted, contemplative. You mean sort of like a letter? Exactly. A reciprocal exercise, Sarah replied. A letter each week until our next meeting. We lay it all out. Worries about our families, our ambitions, whatever is holding us back. This way, we're not just writing for ourselves, but pushing each other forward. With an intent nod, Eric's walls began to lower, and a hint of anticipation lit his expression. That might just work. Each week, raw and real. But what if I fail at it? Failure isn't the enemy here, Eric. It's the refusal to try that truly holds us back. We'll support each other through that and grow from it. The air between them shifted once more, now imbued with a sense of shared purpose. Yet in the recesses of Sarah's mind, a warning sighed. A recognition that burying their fears would be far easier than confronting the realities of their truths. As they settled into their agreed framework, Sarah's excitement simmered beneath the surface, dangerously close to anxiety. Just as clarity bloomed, the potential for revealing their innermost selves threatened to darken the path ahead. "What's our first letter about?" Eric asked, the tone of unguarded eagerness making her pulse quicken. "I think it should start with what's pulling us under, the things that frighten us the most," Sarah said, contemplating her own shadows lurking just out of reach. Before Eric could respond, an uproar from the cafe's entrance pulled them both from their thoughts. A man, frantic and disheveled, burst in, scanning the crowd with a sense of urgency. "Is anyone here Sarah Allen?" he called out, his voice cutting through the cafe's murmur, leaving Sarah's heart pounding with trepidation. "What now?" she murmured under her breath, feeling the ground shift beneath her as all eyes turned to her, and she realized nothing could prepare her for the inevitable shakeup about to unfold. The tension in the cafe thickened, wrapping around Sarah like a vice. She felt the warmth of the golden light transform into an oppressive weight that pressed upon her chest. Who needed her, and why now? The man's fierce expression forced every patron's eyes onto her, and for a fleeting moment she was rendered powerless. "That's me," she said, her voice trembling but clear. She stood to confront the unknown, her feet rooted in place, unable to assess the implications of whatever news came next. The man's disheveled hair framed a face marbled with urgency. "Your father. He's had an accident. You need to come with me." A drumbeat of dread pulsed in her ears as a rush of adrenaline surged through her veins. The casual chatter of the cafe dissolved into a muffled buzz, and the reality of the man's words settled in like a sprawling shadow. Panic gripped her gut, colliding with an unexpected sense of ecstasy. She had no idea what awaited her, but it was no longer a choice whether to step up or retreat. "Wait," she stammered, working through the haze infusing her thoughts. Is he okay?" The man shifted uncomfortably, the slight movement exposing the weight of the news he bore. "It's serious. He needs you." Each word was a stone dropped into the lake of her mind, sending ripples of memory skimming across the surface. Her father hadn't been well for some time. Their relationship bore the fractures of unspoken grievances and old resentments. Yet, in that instant, she was stripped bare of her previous concerns, about Eric, about her ambitions. The call to duty was loud and insistent. "Let's go." Sarah dismissed her anxiety with this impulsive decision, feeling Eric's presence behind her, steady but unspoken. She turned slightly, eager for his support, feeling the bond they were beginning to forge navigate the choppy waters of her tumultuous feelings. He rose to join her, an uncharacteristic calm resting on his features. "Are you sure?" Eric's question was laced with concern, but it also reflected a growing sense of understanding about her. "No, but I can't just sit here," she replied, tightening her resolve while trying to fathom the magnitude of what lay ahead. As she stepped outside, the chilly evening air wrapped around her like a stark contrast to the warmth of the cafe. Thoughts of letters, fears, and dreams crept back to her, yet all those conversations dimmed in importance against the surge of adrenaline driving her into the unknown. The man gestured toward a car parked nearby, an older model that seemed to belong more to a memory than an era. Sarah climbed in alongside the stranger, Eric sliding in after her. "I'm Tom," the man introduced himself, his eyes darting to the road ahead. "We need to move fast." The car lurched forward, and the silence was filled with Sarah's jumbled thoughts. Was this a chance to mend something broken? Would it lead to reconnection or deeper hurt? Her mind wrestled with her emotions as they tore through the streets, each turn propelling her further into her responsibilities while her ambitions hung suspended, waiting. The car pulled up outside the hospital, the clinical facade stark against her swirling internal landscape. Stepping out, Sarah could feel the weight of her past pressing down harder, demanding acknowledgement. But alongside that weight was determination, a burgeoning sense of agency. As Tom led the way, Sarah steeled herself for whichever version of her father she'd encounter, but a thought nagged at her. Would she be strong enough to confront not just the situation at hand, but also the remnants of her childhood that had shaped her into the woman she strived to be? "Stay close," Eric murmured, instinctively reaching for her hand. The trust in his gaze ground her swirling thoughts, infusing her with newfound courage. The door slid open, and the sterile air from within the hospital rushed out as if beckoning her toward the next chapter of confrontation. Yet another thought punctured her clarity. What if this was the pivotal moment she had feared yet longed for? A confrontation not just with her father, but with herself. "Are you ready for this?" Eric asked quietly, his presence a comforting contrast to the impending storm. With a deep breath, Sarah felt the tremor in her resolve transform into something sharper, a piercing awareness of her potential to pivot from past shadows into the light of possibility. Ready or not, I have to face it. As they walked in through the hospital doors, the echo of her footsteps seemed to resonate not just on the linoleum floor, but in the very core of her being. The struggle within her was about to unfold in ways she couldn't yet imagine, building to a climax poised at her very boundaries. Or perhaps it would unravel a tapestry of resilience woven through her journey. To confront what lay ahead would mean more than just her father's fate. It would define her in ways that extended far beyond the confines of her family obligations. Whether she would rise or falter remained unanswered. But one thing was clear: the letter to Eric would frame her story for a much larger context, and she was ready to confront her deepest fears. "It's all about to change," she whispered, aware that the next moment would propel her toward a destiny she hadn't begun to conceive. As they stepped further inside, a voice called out from the reception, "Are you Sarah Allen? We need you in the family room, now." The tension in the air was electric as Sarah's heart raced. She felt the familiar tangle of fear and trepidation tightening within her. Her father needed her, and in this moment, despite all her hesitation, she was prepared to answer that call. "Go, Sarah," Eric whispered, sensing the weight of the moment resting heavily on her shoulders. This was her time to stand, not just for her father, but for herself. She turned to him, gratitude pooling in her chest. "I'll be okay. I need to do this," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. With a nod, she slipped away from Eric's reassuring presence and followed Tom down the sterile corridors of the hospital, each step a march into the unknown. As they approached the family room, the sterile scent of the hospital filled her senses, reminding her of the countless times she had navigated these halls in her professional life. But this time felt different. This wasn't about imparting care to a patient. It was about reclaiming her relationship with her father. Memories of their last conversations loomed, filled with misunderstandings and unaddressed emotions. Would this be her chance to confront their shared history, their unspoken grievances, head-on? When she arrived in the family room, she found her mother pacing anxiously, lines of worry tracing her forehead. "Sarah," her mother exclaimed, rushing over to envelop her in a brief, tight embrace before stepping back with a look of urgency. "It's your father. They're doing everything they can, but there are no guarantees." The weight of her mother's words crashed over Sarah, pooling in her stomach. It hurt to see the fear etched on her mother's face. "What happened?" she asked, struggling to keep her voice steady even as chaos rumbled under the surface. "He fell while fixing the roof," her mother explained, anguish pinching her voice. "He hasn't regained consciousness since the accident." At that moment, Sarah's reality shifted, the gravity of life's fleeting nature crashing over her like icy water. All their unresolved issues and hidden resentments felt irrelevant against the backdrop of her father's fragile state. "I need to see him," she said, determination igniting as she pushed against the rising waves of uncertainty. Tom nodded, leading her toward the dim hospital room where her father lay. Each step built a mix of dread and resolve within her. This was a confrontation she had long feared, but now couldn't shy away from. Entering the room felt like crossing a threshold into a sacred space, one that held not just her father's presence, but the reflections of their shared lives. The steady beep of the monitors filled the silence, as her gaze settled on the man who had been both a caretaker and a source of conflict in her life. His frail body lay on the bed surrounded by machines, but it was the peaceful expression on his face that struck a deep chord within her. In this moment, she realized that this wasn't just about the past or the pain. It was about plunging into the depths of their shared humanity. "Hey, Dad," she whispered, standing at his bedside, feeling a rippling tide of emotions washing over her. "I know things between us haven't been easy, but you're still my father. I need you to fight." Tears blurred her vision, and she fought against them, unwilling to show weakness. Just then, she felt Eric's presence beside her. The strength of his solidarity shone through in his unwavering gaze, urging her on. "You can do this," he encouraged, a quiet strength bolstering her resolve. In that moment, Sarah found the courage she had been searching for. She wasn't just confronting her father, she was confronting herself, the layers of doubt and the unresolved conflicts that had long held her captive. "I promise to be here for you, but I also need you to be here for me," she continued, pouring out her heart. "I've struggled for years with feeling like I never lived up to your expectations, but I want you to know that your support for me matters. You taught me to pursue my dreams, and I can't do that if we're holding on to things left unsaid." As her words emanated with raw honesty, a spark of revelation flared within her. It wasn't just a plea for her survival, it was a declaration of independence from the shadows that had loomed in their relationship. She looked at Eric, who was observing patiently, proud of her ability to embrace vulnerability. "You're not alone in this," he said, his voice steady and reassuring. Each moment unfolded like a canvas, painting new possibilities. As Sarah stood resolute beside her father, she embraced the uncertainty of what lay ahead, trusting that whatever transpired next would illuminate the importance of balance between duty and personal fulfillment. Days stretched ahead, and after agonizing hours of waiting, her father began to regain consciousness, awakening to her presence. The initial connection was fragile, but as they slowly began to talk, healing instincts took root. Together, they faced their past, revisiting regrets and misunderstandings, while simultaneously forging new understandings. In the days that followed, Sarah realized profound truths. She discovered not only the fragility of life, but also the strength that comes from confronting what truly matters. Her deep-seated fears about pursuing her dreams began to fade as she engaged in daily conversations with her father, acknowledging the complexity of their histories while constructing pathways of compassion toward their shared future. Eventually, as her father's recovery progressed, she took a leap, a confident decision driven by the clarity of purpose that had emerged through this turbulent experience. Fueled by renewed passion, she returned to her writing, breathing life into narratives that had long simmered beneath the surface, including the story of healing between a father and daughter, the story she needed to tell. And with that decision came recognition. Weeks later, during a local writing showcase, her words resonated through the audience, igniting connections and sparking inspiration. The experience was exhilarating, a moment of deep fulfillment as she shared her journey not just of loss, but of rediscovery. Eric, in the crowd, beamed with pride as he watched her illuminate the truths of her experiences, understanding the emotional landscapes they had traversed together. Their connection had morphed into a formidable force for change, emboldened by honesty and vulnerability at its core. Sarah emerged from this journey transformed, not just as a daughter, but as a writer, an architect of her own narrative, ready to embrace both triumphs and struggles with newfound clarity. With her father's support palpably felt in every step she took, she was a testament to the profound power of transformation. And as she stood there, words flowing like a river, she knew that true success was not defined by wealth or external validation, but by the courage to confront her fears and embrace the complexity of her identity. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the culmination of understanding herself as a whole person. Her journey had evolved, and she was no longer just a nurse. She was a writer, eager to inspire, a woman of balance striving to integrate all facets of her life. What awaited her now was a broader horizon filled with possibility. Resting in the knowledge she had conquered her past and embraced her future, Sarah smiled, her heart unburdened, her spirit free. Life she had chosen. This was her story. If you were inspired by this incredible journey of self-discovery and growth, I need you to subscribe immediately to the channel. This is the moment to show your support, so click that like button now to feed the algorithm that brings more emotional stories like this one. I want to hear from you. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Sarah's transformation. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support truly matters. Let's keep diving into inspiring stories together.